Story 1. In my first year living on a Caribbean island, there was a debate on the parliament floor between a local politician and a European politician since the island still has colonial and financial ties. The local politician stated, "You're not from here. I am from here, my wife is from here, my girlfriend is from here, and my side piece is from here. Forget you, you're not from here." On the record, it was neither the worst case of corruption nor the biggest scandal, but definitely one of the funniest scandals I have heard in my time there. Story 2. Not a scandal per se, but in 2022, the United Kingdom government basically imploded twice, and we had a prime minister that infamously lasted less than a supermarket lettuce. The lettuce has its own Wikipedia page titled Liz Truss Lettuce. Story 3. Before he was a talk show host, Jerry Springer was the mayor of Cincinnati. He was caught soliciting a prostitute. How was he caught? He paid her with a check. Story 4. Tractorgate. A British member of parliament was caught watching pornography in the Commons and claimed he was trying to find pictures of tractors. Story 5. Iceland's Minister of Finance was found in the Panama Papers and the Ashley Madison leak. The whole government dissolved, and a new election was planned. He made a campaign video where he decorated his kid's birthday cake. The country voted him in as prime minister in the next election. This is just one of that guy's scandals. He just became prime minister again, after he had to step down as minister of finance. Again, because he sold a nationalized bank to his father at a family discount. Instead of leaving like most people wanted, he just traded places and made himself Minister of Foreign Affairs. Story 6. South Carolina's Republican governor, Mark Sanford, went missing for 6 days. His press secretary said he was hiking the Appalachian Trail. However, he had a girlfriend in Argentina. Story 7. How about that time the major telecoms took over $400 billion to install fiber optics in homes, schools, and libraries across the entire country and just didn't? The money was just reinvested in the companies to expand overseas and pay legal fees fighting against competitors with fiber plans and blocking future expansion. Here is $400 billion. Please use it to give us all good internet. Okay. Hey, where's that high-speed internet you were going to put in? Oh, we decided that was way too expensive. It would cost like $400 billion, and we just don't have the money. Have this DSL instead over the existing network. Story 8. The mayor of Badalona was stopped for speeding while under the influence and being outside of his confinement area during the pandemic, and then biting a police officer. Story 9. A United States vice president accidentally shot his friend in the face while they were hunting birds with clipped wings. Later, the friend apologized on national television. Story 10. John Stonehouse. Caught up in creative accounting of firms he established after he lost ministerial roles and related pay, this former member of parliament and head of the British Post Office decided to fake his own death so he could run off with his mistress to Australia, after embezzling a significant amount of money. But his method of faking his death was so absurd, leaving his clothes on the beach and swimming out to sea to make it look like he had either drowned or was attacked by a shark, that it wasn't believed. And unfortunately, when he arrived in Australia, his behavior caught the eye of locals who reported him to the police, because they presumed he was Lord Lucan, a more high-profile disappearance of a British peer who disappeared after he murdered the nanny of his children while trying to kill his ex-wife and kidnap his children, only 2 weeks beforehand. And to prove he wasn't Lucan, he was forced by the Australian police to drop his pants and show them proof. Yes, really. Story 11. The Bridgegate scandal in New Jersey in 2013 involved Governor Chris Christie's administration orchestrating lane closures on the George Washington Bridge as political retribution against the mayor of Fort Lee, who did not endorse Christie's re-election bid. Story 12. Abscam. Federal Bureau of Investigation agents dressed up as Arab oil sheiks to offer bribes to U.S. congressmen. A bunch of them took the deal. 6 representatives and 1 senator, plus various other officials, were convicted. Story 13. Marion Barry, former Washington, D.C. mayor, was involved in a scandal where he was caught by federal authorities smoking crack in a hotel room. Eventually, he was sentenced to prison for 6 months. Incredibly, several years later, he was re-elected as the mayor of D.C. Story 14. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was involved in a scandal concerning inappropriate behavior with a deceased pig's head. It was quite astonishing, particularly since there had been a Black Mirror episode revolving around a similar premise released shortly before the scandal came to light. Story 15. Sarah Huckabee Sanders paid $19,000 to her close friend for a lectern, even though the most expensive lectern is about $7,000. She and her friend then went on a vacation to Paris. The local Republican Party then wrote to be reimbursed on the receipt. What's most absurd to me is Huckabee Sanders trying to make it illegal to prosecute a governor. The official report comes out tomorrow. That should be enlightening. Story 16. A utility company bribes the Speaker of the Ohio House with $60 million to pass legislation to provide $1 billion in subsidies for 2 old nuclear power plants. It is so audaciously corrupt it would have to be fiction, right? Nope. Welcome to the very real scandal of House Bill 6. Story 17, Jeremy Thorpe. The Thorpe affair has it all, from bungling hitmen accidentally harming the pet dog, to gay sex, to hovercraft. Story 18. On the tragic end of the scale, there are the mass deaths at Jonestown and the perpetrators' ties to the San Francisco city government, followed days later by the assassinations of the mayor and Harvey Milk. Story 19. Dick Cheney realized that the country had elected a very useful individual, and then spent the entirety of Bush's presidency figuring out ways to mislead the country in ways that were profitable to him. Story 20. This is pretty tame by Chicago standards, but I will just copy and paste from Wikipedia because it is still so insane to me. In 2003, then Chicago Mayor Richard M. Daley ordered the overnight bulldozing of Meigs Field's runway without notice, ending operations and converting the airport into a park. The move shocked and disappointed aviation communities, and some have seen it as an example of mayoral overreach. The bulldozers gouged 6 X's into the runway, rendering it unusable. Story 21. The married leader of the Liberal Party in the UK in the 1970s had a homosexual affair with a male model. Homosexuality was still illegal in the UK. When the male model wanted to end the relationship, the politician tried to have him killed. There was then a trial at the Old Bailey with charges of conspiracy to murder. The politician was found not guilty because the judge essentially instructed the jury to find him not guilty. The instructions were based on the premise that the politician was supposedly an upstanding member of the upper classes who had done great work, and that his accuser was just some homosexual male model. The politician involved was Jeremy Thorpe. Story 22, South Africa. The health minister left coronavirus patients to die in tents. When he was questioned, he demanded an apology from the broadcaster. Story 23, the pig war. A farmer shot another farmer's pig on disputed territory, and it escalated to the brink of war between the United States and England, complete with troops being deployed from both sides. Story 24, Magic. The Gathering's entire career, but I just can't get over how she presented a meme to Congress and was taken even remotely seriously. How did that conversation go down? Tell me, Marge, what episode of Scooby-Doo is this from? It's not. Some random person photoshopped it. Well, that makes it even more credible. In an ideal world, stuff like this would get you laughed at and possibly fined for presenting as evidence to Congress. I get that a meme might clarify a point, but it shouldn't be used as sole evidence. If she had facts or data along with it, then use the meme to wrap up her point. That would have been fine. Still arguably a silly waste of time, but ultimately fine. But that was her primary evidence. Story 25, sure. Here is the text after correction for Azure Text-to-Speak AI. Pizza gott. I mean, come on, a secret dungeon under a pizza shop that is supposedly backed by a democratic deep state? Story 26, Operation Bid Rig in New Jersey. In 2009, more than 60 people were arrested, including at least 12 elected officials. Started out fairly normal. Politicians taking bribes from developers for favorable contracts and stuff like that. Busts like that happen all the time. This was a little bigger and had a few higher profile names, but mostly a difference in scale, not type. What made this one different, though, was how these bribes came about. As they delved into the money laundering portion of the investigation, it turned out that the way a lot of the bribes were financed came through the harvesting and resale of black market kidneys. Story 27. When the former governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford, disappeared for a week, his staff initially said he was hiking the Appalachian Trail. However, he was actually in Argentina with his mistress. Story 28. Chinese foreign ministers suddenly disappear from public life because of affairs with a Chinese news anchor. Reports suggest that he has been killed. Story 29. The affair of the diamond necklace involves the most expensive diamond necklace in the world, designed for the king's mistress. Among the key figures are a cardinal in disgrace, a con artist countess, and a prostitute impersonator. The countess convinces the cardinal that he can win back the queen's favor if he purchases the necklace for her. Meanwhile, a prostitute impersonates the queen. The cardinal buys the necklace and gives it to the countess, who promptly runs off with it and breaks it up to sell the diamonds individually. Who ends up being blamed? The innocent Queen Marie Antoinette. Story 30. Gary Hart, the Democratic frontrunner, was found with a model on a yacht named Monkey Business. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Story 31. South Korea's president was ousted because she was part of a religious cult that was running everything behind the scenes. Story 32. Sure, here is the corrected text suitable for Azure text-to-speech AI. Probably using a Sharpie on a storm map, endangering people's lives, because you can't admit you made a mistake. Story 33. Elliot Spitzer leaving his socks on while being involved with his expensive call girl and organizing his financial transactions to conceal it. Quite bold for the sheriff of Wall Street to do that. Story 34. Sharpie-gate, also known as the Hurricane Dorian Alabama controversy. Then President Trump accidentally included Alabama in a list of states that would be impacted by incoming Hurricane Dorian. Rather than admit he made a mistake, he instead later showed reporters a hurricane track that had been altered with a black Sharpie marker to include Alabama, as well as making the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration retroactively report that Alabama had been included in the initial warnings. Story 35. A Supreme Court of the United States judge presiding over trials that involve his wife, after being found out to basically live off wealthy friends. Fire his corrupt behind already. Story 36. Mark Sanford, South Carolina governor, went missing for a week. His spokesperson said he was hiking the Appalachian Trail. It turns out he was in Argentina with his mistress. Story 37. Donald Trump's "grab them by the cat," and how every news anchor and journalist had to figure out ways to say that line without saying that word. And Billy Bush, the poor shocked interviewer, was practically burned at the stake while Donald went on to be president. It's absurd, the reaction of people in this country. Story 38. In Canada, a significant amount of COVID money was redirected to a network of extreme Christian men so they could start businesses all over Western Canada. It resembles a cult, and they adhere to strict rules. The governments implicated in redirecting the funds were caught, but no action was taken against them. There is even a paper on the subject. The religious sect is known as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. I observed several companies emerge in my industry that utilized faceless marketing and had a very shady backlink network. These companies all disappeared when the news broke. While I was driving through an area in Saskatchewan where I knew they operated, it was evident they were long gone. Story 39. Ted Kennedy and the Chappaquiddick incident still just astonishes me. He flips his car into a pond and lets his 28-year-old girlfriend drown in there. Story 40. Who remembers the tan suit and the Dijon mustard that had right-wing media losing their minds? Story 41. The Great Balloon Crisis of 2023, was it? Or the Helium Boogaloo, as I am referring to the wayward Chinese balloon incident that led the United States to shoot a bunch of non-spy related objects out of the sky on top of the balloon. Story 42. The 1974 Tanganyika laughter epidemic in Tanzania, where uncontrollable laughter spread across a group of schoolgirls and then to the wider community, seemed so absurd it was almost fictional. Lasting several months and causing school closures, it is a bizarre instance where laughter, typically a joyous expression, turned problematic and puzzling. Story 43. 10,000 pounds on biscuits in a year. Yes, a former United Kingdom Member of Parliament had to respond to a newspaper attacking him for spending 10,000 pounds on biscuits in a single year. Story 44. Republican Senate candidate Jack Ryan, married to Jerry Ryan, tried to get her to have sex at swingers parties. Jerry Ryan, also known as Seven of Nine from Star Trek fame. Story 45. Italy's P2 scandal from the 1980s. Long story short, a rogue Masonic lodge infiltrates the Vatican Bank and the Italian government, becomes a shadow state within a state, implodes loudly and publicly with only a handful of people ever seriously punished, and mysterious deaths of people who could connect the powerful to the crimes. Oh, and one member later goes on to become Prime Minister. Story 46. New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell spent $30,000 in taxpayer dollars to buy first-class plane tickets for personal vacations. When pressed about it, she said, "Flying coach isn't safe for black people." Story 47. The only absurdity for me is the lack of career-ending scandals. So much has been done that would have decimated the careers of 100 people, and crickets chirping. In the last 10 years, the sanctity of everything has evaporated. Worse, the political disparity between both parties is effectively Al Franken and Donald Trump on a scale of event and accountability. And the public can't be bothered to understand or care about the difference.